orders aren't suggestions and laws aren't optional. If you cannot handle your own state, the President of the United States has every right to come in. And right now, Gavin Newsom is treating public safety, he's treating our lives and our treasure as his plaything for his presidential campaign. His priority isn't the safety and the well-being of the American people. It's his own political preservation. He's positioning himself, trying to have it both ways, trying to pretend that he's all for illegal aliens, and then also that he's moderate. He cannot have it both ways.
The gloss is gone. The hairspray can't hold. People aren't whispering it anymore. They're saying it out loud. Gavin Newsom's showroom shine is flaking off, and Lindi Li just peeled it back with receipts that bite harder than the headlines ever did. Here's the core of it. Li didn't just clap back. She mapped out exactly how California's golden boy morphed into a national attention machine while the lights flickered at home. Homelessness spiking, jobs wobbling, donors wooed with anti-Trump theatrics, and she did it in a way that even diehards are struggling to shrug off. You came for the clip. Consider this your click confirmation. And yes, the public sentiment is brutal. The image looks presidential, but the record reads like
the things that we discussed in this episode and the previous one about San Francisco being the incubator of shitty ideas.
Yes.
Last episode we talked
Literally
about speaking with American men. The Democrats' idea of catering to the white demographic. Now we have grading for equity coming from San Francisco as well. Do we really think that a city with drug addicts on every other street corner, that should be our bastion of reason? I don't think so.
And
with
why
Nancy
do we have
Pelosi
people...
at the helm?
Sorry.
No, I mean, just saying, like, Nancy Pelosi and her gang of woke DEI liberals should not be the cultural
Can I say one
authority.
thing about that? You bring up Nancy Pelosi. What a brilliant point.
a cautionary tale. Now for the twist you weren't expecting. This didn't land like a partisan grenade. It hit because it sounded like common sense. Quick proof? We're talking claims that California leads the nation in homelessness and is struggling with unemployment. We're talking businesses bolting for tax-friendlier zip codes. And we're talking a governor who tried moderate for a month, then sprinted back to the most lucrative stage in American politics, being an anti-Trump crusader. Here's the roadmap. First, the pivot, from podcast peacekeeper to fundraising flamethrower. Second, the governance gap, the tents, the taxes, the flight of employers. Then the hypocrisy tour, the spin room, just a cold...
Gavin Newsom 2028 presidential campaign. He's grandstanding and making a clown of himself because he wants national attention. He tried the moderate thing for a month and realized it wasn't raising him any funds. So he's back to being an anti-Trump crusader because he realizes that it helps him with his coffers and his fundraising. So that's why he's on a tear, and he's a complete hypocrite. And I just saw that California now leads the nation in homelessness and unemployment. Maybe he should focus on that, instead of focusing his time on this complete waste of taxpayer money. He has no agenda items. He has nothing positive to offer the American people. The only thing he cares about is himself. Everything is about him. And even Democrats understand this guy is truly fake. He's if you look up snake oil salesman in the dictionary, you would see his face right next to the definition.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be snake oil or hair grease or hair product, but you never know.
Actually,
probably both.
Bold. The Mount Rushmore self-retweet, the merch wars, the revisionist history. We'll walk into the Trump-proof democracy scheme, the donor demands for a real accounting, the media's sudden appetite for the mess behind the moose, and we'll end where it hurts most. Why this humiliation sticks, and why every new camera angle now frames him with the cracks people can't unsee. Ready? Breathe. We're going in. Picture it. A governor who floats into rooms like a cologne commercial, sleeves rolled to the perfect height, every shrug practiced, every smile measured to imply empathy without ever surrendering control. For about a month, he flirted with middle-lane politics. Podcast launched. A polite sit-down with ideological opposites. The Telegraph message. I'm the adult in the room. Then the donation numbers yawned, and the tone changed like a channel flip. Suddenly, he wasn't just a governor. He was an avenging brand manager. Anti-Trump crusades moved product. Outrage moved emails. Emails moved money. And money, this is the part everyone pretends.
He mentions 4 machinations that he plans to use in order to circumvent Trump, or in his words, Trump-proof democracy. And I just want to say, before I go into the 4 different measures, he is basically saying the American people cannot be trusted to make the right decision.
Right.
So I have to engage in these really slimy and subversive measures to undermine the will of the American people.
Okay, go through the 4.
His first thing is a special election.
What does that
A special
mean?
session of the state legislature. He would just call them back and have them do a lightning round of Trump-proof measures that will circumvent his immigration enforcement and other, for example, the deployment of the National Guard. Basically, Trump-proof anything.
He lost that in court.
But he doesn't have that power.
He lost.
He is lying. He's just saying whatever. As I said before, he's just saying whatever he thinks his audience wants to hear. He's not
Something's not to know. Money moves strategy. Hold that line in your head because it explains the next hour of choices better than any podium speech ever will. Now, the pivot isn't a sin by itself. Politicians pivot all the time, but this one wasn't quiet. It was a full sprint back into the arena he swears he's not measuring drapes for. Merch wars, self-mythology, the Mount Rushmore retweet, the playful papal wink, perfume lines, and a Bible brand tossed into the discourse blender to keep the spotlight hot. Meanwhile, a different set of numbers refused to play along. Homelessness visible on every block like a never-ending construction zone you can't detour around. Power that hiccups at the worst possible moments. A cost of living that makes people calculate rent the way accountants stress test bad debt. And the job story, the unemployment drag. If you're living it, you don't need a chart to believe it. That's the context. Here's the application. When voters feel like props in a fundraising infomercial, they tune out the pitch and look at the floors, the wiring, the...
Folks say, oh, they're just cleaning up this place because all those fancy leaders are coming into town. That's true, because it's true. But it's also true for months and months and months prior to APEC, we've been having different conversations.
Roof. Framing? Expectations versus reality. The expectation was glossy competence. The reality looks like a staged home with a cracked foundation and a realtor insisting the creaks are historical charm. Enter Lindi Li. Not a party rival running a poll-tested op, not a predictable media antagonist. A voice with a memory and a file folder, the kind that refuses to be hypnotized by the sheen. She didn't punch with adjectives, she punched with specifics. Donors poured $1 billion in 100 days. She says, some in installments, people stretching to give because they believed the swing state fairy tales. 7 were touted as close or winnable. All 7 vanished into the lost column. If that lands like a gut shot, it's because it is won. Context: donors want impact, not postcards.
That deep bench, who do you believe is most likely to get that support going forward in the next presidential run?
With all due respect, I find that a very comical thing to say, given that there's a flaw in every single one of the candidates they consider qualified. I've been in touch with Newsom's team for a number of years now. He reached out in 2022 asking for my support. And if anyone asks for my support and you're based in California, I'm assuming you're running for president. So this has been a long time goal of his. I was a national fundraiser. So anyone reaching out to me across the country, I'm assuming has his eyes set on the White House because I'm a national fundraiser and I live in a battleground state of Pennsylvania. Gavin Newsom is using his podcast and this new platform to position himself in the middle. But we have to remember that California is on the frontier of woke ideology, of extreme liberal policies, ideas that push me out of the party. I've been asking the party to moderate itself for half a decade. But when I raised criticisms, people like AOC would try to cancel me online. And so these sort of tactics, there's no room for dissension. You have to follow the party line or else you're excommunicated.
Yeah, tell me more about this. Do you feel that Gavin Newsom is trying to fix his wokeness? We're seeing a media blitz. We're seeing his podcast.
When the returns don't match the promises, receipts become subpoenas. Framing. The credibility tax will always come due, and it collects with interest. Let's hit the second best point first. The motives behind a man. You don't need to hate a politician to understand a balance sheet. The attention economy pays in dollars, and anti-Trump crusading has always been a private sector gold rush. He tried moderation, and the coffers yawned. He lit the crusade beacon, and the coffers sang. So he fed the machine. You saw it. Television dust-ups, national swipes, talking points engineered like limited drop sneakers. He wore the cape because the cape rents well. That's the scene. What does it mean right now? It means the governor's podium blurred into a pre-campaign stage where every line anticipates a donor reaction rather than a policy result. Why does it matter? Because it inverts the job. The office is supposed to feed the people. Instead, the people are feeding the office's narrative. Expectations versus reality. Again, the expectation was stewardship. The reality looks like subscription content. Now the strongest point, the governance gap that makes press releases wilt. Homelessness is not a statistic when it's pitched outside your kid's school. It's a tent city where the bus stop used to be. Taxes aren't a theory when your paycheck looks pre-garnished. Unemployment isn't a trend line when your brother-in-law's moving back in. Businesses aren't relocating when they're loading U-Hauls and pinging Texas realtors on WhatsApp. California was sold as a utopia under professional management. Meanwhile, that utopia is writing IOUs on the back of cocktail napkins. Context: the state is the 5th largest economy on Earth, a place where innovation used to feel inevitable. Application: when Tesla-driving CEOs are pricing warehouse space near barbecue joints, the brand is not selling itself anymore. Framing: it's not that the dream died, it's that the marketing eclipsed maintenance. The gap between what residents were told and what they experience every morning is where disillusionment blossoms. And once you see the gap, you can't unsee it. Add to that the hypocrisy reel that's harder to mute. Remember the spin room? The night of the debate when Just a Cold was floated like a lavender-scented towel over a bonfire? The insistence, again and again, that everything at the top was perfectly fine, while anyone raising questions got painted as doom peddlers or traitors to the cause. And then, with the winds shifting, out strolls the revisionist memoir. We always knew, we always had concerns, we were just being team players. The public is not stupid. They know when they're being gaslit with a smile. That's why Li's voice hit different. She said what people already felt, that the governor who poses as the straight-talk adult often sounds like a salesman with a quota. Context: the persona is competence. Application: the contradictions are piling up. Framing: trust isn't a renewable resource, it's a glass. Once it cracks, the water goes everywhere. Pause here and flash a quick image in your mind. A governor accusing others of grifting while dabbling in his own brand theater. We got the self-retweets, the mock papal imagery, the merch circus. And yes, the irony is loud enough to set off car alarms. Li doesn't have to scream to make that point. She just lines it up and lets it breathe. That's the trick. When the receipts are simple, the spin looks complicated. And when the spin looks complicated, people suspect the truth is simple. Now we open a loop we'll close in a minute. Trump-proof democracy. For machinations, Li says. Special sessions. Lightning round legal barricades. Structures designed not to persuade voters, but to fence them in, circumvent deployments, blunt enforcement, preempt the authority a future president might legally exercise. Translation: the people can't be trusted to choose correctly, so the system needs a prophylactic. We'll come back to what that does to a brand that sells itself as pro-democracy, but let that phrase sit. Trump-proof democracy. The framing writes itself. Back to the dominoes. The media smelled blood. When you're coiffed like a campaign poster and rehearsed like a TED Talk, reporters often soften their elbows. But blunt facts have a way of shaming soft elbows into steel. Homelessness isn't theoretical. Rolling blackouts aren't vibes. Downtowns that feel like post-apocalyptic movie sets aren't partisan mirages. So the pieces that used to quote the eyebrow arch started quoting the sidewalk. And nothing twists a politician's stomach like watching the press discover that the hair can't hold a sandbag.